Question: what is self-transcendence? What does it look like? How can I constantly be transcending myself? Well, let's start with a simple example. When I was probably 9 or 10 years old, I had developed this habit of using swear words. And I thought it made me seem more adult, because at the time, some of the adults around me were using swear words. Today, that's pretty much faded away in Danish society, but at the time it was common. So I thought it made me look more adult. And one day I was outside and I was swearing, and it was almost like I heard an echo from the universe of myself. And I sensed how stupid I sounded when I was using these swear words. And I instantly stopped. So what happened? Well, I had developed a sense of self that it was cool to use swear words. And I suddenly saw it just made me look stupid, and I transcended that sense of self. And of course, many other situations like this. I have in some videos I've talked about how I had this, as a child, I had this fear of skeletons. And I finally overcame it by allowing myself to be locked into a dark room with a skeleton. And when I stood there in front of that skeleton, I basically mentally said, okay, if you've got any power, come and get me. And when nothing happened, it was like I could let go of this, what I call a subconscious self. And I was over the fear. I mean, the fear, that was the final disappearance of that fear, which was I transcended the self that had the fear. I just let it die. And, you know, I'm sure that all spiritual people have had some experience like this, of where you suddenly came to see something in yourself. You saw it was limiting you, and you just let it go. You just let it go. I mean, how did you find a spiritual teaching? You were probably brought up to see yourself either as a good Christian or as an atheist. See yourself as you have a certain sense of self based on your culture, your family, your society. And now all of a sudden you find a spiritual teaching, you accept this spiritual teaching, you accept that you are a spiritual being living in a physical body. That's self-transcendence right there. And then of course you can have many spiritual teachings talk about how it's possible to systematically raise our consciousness to higher and higher levels. But here's where we have to be careful, because self-transcendence is not an automatic thing. I have some breakthrough videos where I talk about the difference between the outer path and the inner path. Where on the outer path we think that, for example, meditating every day, or giving decrees and invocations, or prostrating ourselves on the floor, that will automatically raise our consciousness. But it doesn't. You know, the raising of consciousness is only when we realize that we need to look at ourselves and we need to come to see something in ourselves that limits us and let it go. That's self-transcendence. Through self-awareness, we become aware that there's this aspect in our own psychology that's limiting us, and we consciously decide we don't want this anymore, and therefore we let it go. And I've given several videos, including a couple of breakthrough videos, where I talk about these subconscious selves. And basically you can say that what prevents us from having self-awareness is that we have these constructions in our subconscious mind. Separate selves, or subconscious selves, I call them. And it's something we created often in past lives in response to difficult situations. Can be very traumatic situations or just difficult situations. And what they do is that they're giving us this sense of self, that we are this kind of a being and we can't do certain things. Very common sense of self is all children like to draw. And adults, for strange reasons, give children crayons and paper and encourage them to draw. But many times, without realizing it, adults give children negative feedback on their drawings. And as a result of this, many children, and I have met many of them, I remember when I was a child in school, they make this decision, I can't draw. Now, I always loved drawing, and I was fairly good at it. And we would have in my class, we would have this every month or so, people would submit their drawings. And they would be put up in front of the class, and the people would vote on which drawings they liked. And then 10 of these drawings would be hung in the back of the classroom for the next month. And there was a point where we had this, and 10 drawings were selected, and I realized that 9 of those 10 drawings were made by me. And I realized I couldn't allow myself to submit that many drawings anymore because it would discourage other people from drawing. They were thinking, oh, Kim can draw, but I can't. And I didn't want that. I didn't want to be that person that discouraged others. So what I'm saying, I went off on a tangent, but anyway, what I was trying to say is that many children develop this idea, I can't draw. Others develop this idea, I can't do math. It's too complicated for me. And this is creating a subconscious self that's limiting you. And so self-transcendence is when you come to see, oh, I have this subconscious self based on a certain belief about who I am and what I can and can't do. And then you look at it from the outside, you step outside of it, and you see it, but it's not true. I'm more than this. I can be more than this. And of course, the most limiting selves that we have are the ones that say, you're a human being, you're not a spiritual being. And, in terms of, let's take Christianity as an example. I've said it before that Jesus was meant to be an example that we can all reach a higher state of consciousness, which he called the Christ consciousness. The incarnation of Christ was not an exclusive event that happened one time 2,000 years ago and will never happen again. It happened in Jesus because he was meant to be the example that it can happen in many people. I'm not saying everybody, but at least 10,000 people can manifest full Christhood in this lifetime. Millions of more can manifest a high degree of it. But there's a whole set of beliefs that are projected by the fallen beings, by our culture, by the Christian churches, that nobody can do what Jesus did. You do not have a Christ potential. You do not have the potential to manifest Christhood like Jesus did. Many, many beliefs of that, and most people have over many lifetimes. This has been going on in the Christian churches, have been denying this for 17 centuries. So many of us have incarnated and built these selves that we can't follow Jesus' example. And this is, of course, what we need to shed on the spiritual path. As we go higher and higher, there comes a point where we have to start seeing our Christ potential, accepting our Christ potential, and then looking at these selves and realizing the reality is we have this Christ potential because we were created as extensions of the Creator's being, just like Jesus was. And we have to overcome this that limits us and says, oh no, you can't be the Christ. We have to look at these selves and realize it's an illusion. They are based on an illusion because we all have the potential to be the open door for our I am presences and the ascended masters to bring forth ideas and energy through us. And so that's ultimate self-transcendence when we come to see these illusions. And quite frankly, I've been working with the Ascended Masters since 2002 to bring forth teachings. I published 80 books. I have websites where there's more material that's available for free than in these 80 books. I now have over 300 YouTube videos. And if you step back from this and say, what is the underlying message? It is, you have a spiritual potential. You have a Christ potential. And all of the teachings basically describe various ways where we are denying this Christ potential and how we can overcome that denial and transcend ourselves to really accept who we are as spiritual beings who have a potential to be the open doors for something higher in this world. to stop that self-denial and to really accept our higher potential. So I would say that this is not one big shift, because we have a lot of these selves, so it must happen gradually. But this is the ultimate self-transcendence, where you come to realize I'm not a human being, I'm a spiritual being, and that means I have a potential to be the open door for spirit to shine its light into the darkness of this world.